Hello, this is Kimmy, and welcome to the very first Patreon episode of the Always Talking Crime podcast. Guys, I'm super stoked about this, and I want to thank you for being here first and foremost, but I've got this incredibly crazy ass story to share with you guys. I'm sure that you already saw it. I posted about this on Instagram. I posted about it on Facebook. You see it in the heading, what this case is going to be about. And it kept me up many nights while I was researching this. And I almost decided not to do it because it was just so incredibly horrifying for me. And I just couldn't get past past so many of the details that I almost threw in the towel. And then I thought to myself, bitch, you love true crime. You're obsessed with true crime. You can do this. So I want to share this story with you because I think it's got a really important message in it where as you listen to the story, you're going to notice that there's many people that come across the paths of this family throughout the years that these children were adopted by this couple. So there were so many hints. There were so many things that people missed. And these children could have possibly been saved had more people become involved, had more people maybe paid closer attention, had more people maybe just kept badgering the different CPS, services in all the states that we talk about. But this is a bonkers case and it's heartbreaking. I hope that you guys enjoy it. Well, not enjoy it, but enjoy it. You know what I mean. If you're a crime lover, you already know what I mean by that. But we are going to be talking about the Hart family murder-suicide. Super tragic. It's super appalling to think that as an intoxicated Jennifer Hart drove her 6 adopted children across the country in their family SUV, her wife, Sarah, sat in the passenger seat Googling and looking up different ways to end the family's lives. As the family vehicle was traveling from Washington to California, Sarah was busy with the following Google searches. Can 500 milligrams of Benadryl kill a 125-pound woman? How long does it take to die from hypothermia? Is drowning a painful way to die? And one of her last searches on her phone was they were searching for a no-kill dog shelter, which is super ironic. And I'm not sure if they ever found one. I'm not sure if their family pet was with them in the vehicle as I continue to go through the story. I don't know. But anyways, I thought it was interesting that although they were planning on killing the entire family, they wanted to find a shelter, a no-kill shelter for their dog. So what does that say about them as mothers, as people, as human beings, that they cared more about their dog than they cared about their fucking kids? And you'll hear in the story, there's really no way that they could have legitimately loved the children that they adopted. The SUV carrying the Hart family would soon drive off a 100-foot Pacific Coast cliff on that early morning of March 26th, 2018. A tragedy that police say took all 8 lives and sparked questions about child abuse and homicide. All of the horrifying details emerged soon after the accident. A coroner's jury made up of 14 persons unanimously ruled that the incident was a murder-suicide and that Jennifer and Sarah Hart had intended to die along with their 6 adopted children. Marcus, who was 19, Jeremiah and Abigail, who were both 14, Devonte, who was 15, Hannah, she was 16 years old, and Sierra, who was 12 years old.
The death certificates for Jennifer and Sarah Hart will be listed as suicide. I can tell you it was a very confusing scene because there were no skid marks, there were no brake marks, there was no indication of why this vehicle traversed approximately over 75 feet of a dirt pullout and went into the Pacific Ocean. We do not have a national database for child abuse allegations. And the fact that there were 5 states involved certainly should be an enlightening moment for our national legislatures.
So the inquest was called to determine the cause of everyone's death, but not of any responsibility in the civil or criminal fields. The California Highway Patrol stated that criminal prosecution was not even possible due to the fact that all responsible parties were dead. So there was nobody to prosecute. At first, it seemed unfathomable that parents would actually drive their children from their home in Woodland, Washington, to their deaths in Mendocino County, California. Their social media pages included photos of beaming children holding signs that said, "Love is always beautiful." In fact, I'm going to post some of these too on my social so you can see. And then if you Google the Hart family, all kinds of pictures are going to come up, and it's just devastating. It's devastating. I hope you don't lose sleep like I did, but it's devastating and it's haunting. In some of the photos, the entire family wore matching t-shirts and had big wide grins on their faces. As the national spotlight on the story grew, more details emerged that the children had desperately sought help from the neighbors prior to their murders. Allegations suffered that the parents had abused and starved all of the adopted children for years. As Jennifer drove down the US 101 highway, she had 5 beers in her system, which was enough to make it difficult for her to function, according to investigators. Friends and family of the couple told the police that Jennifer rarely drank. And in fact, she claimed on social media previously that she did not ever drink. However, when investigators went to their home after the murder-suicide, after this tragedy, they found like all kinds of wine around the house. They had a wine rack that was full. So obviously she was a fucking liar and a hypocrite because she apparently did drink. Otherwise, why would you fucking own wine, you know? But the theory is that Jen drank the alcohol to build up her courage to go through with the plan of murdering the entire family. So that police search of the Hart family home, besides all the wine they found, so after this horrific incident, they turned up like few indications that 6 children were even being raised in that home. The home contained only 1 twin bed for all 6 of the children. Investigators couldn't figure out where all the children even slept. The parents had a double bed in one bedroom. Another bedroom contained 2 foam love seats and a padded mat where police believe that some of the children possibly may have slept. The 3rd bedroom is the one that held only the twin-size bed. Jennifer and Sarah Hart, parents of the 6 children, lived well beyond their means, and aspects of their lifestyle became public that were the exact opposite from the way they presented it in public and online. Police were hoping to find some clues They later discovered chest freezers in the family's home that was filled with lunch meat, tortillas, tons of amounts of bread, like different kinds of bread, which is also like super like crazy because the excuse that Jennifer Hart specifically would always say if somebody, made comments that the children were like very small for their ages, she would always say it was because they were raised as vegetarians and, they didn't eat any meat and all this kind of stuff. So apparently, somebody in the household ate meat because there were like tons of like non-vegetarian items inside the house. So it was like totally opposite of the way Jennifer Hart claimed that they led their life. The cops found the home clean and orderly, except for dirty dishes in the kitchen sink and some clothes piled in heaps around the house. More than 270 police photos were taken at the home during the investigation. Investigators also found school supplies, board games, and a small library that was filled with Harry Potter, Twilight, and other young adult novels. No family photos were on display at all anywhere inside the home. Not a single family photo anywhere. Not one. And there were no keepsakes, there were no posters, and no other personal objects that indicated that children and teenagers lived in the house or, had any bedrooms either. So let's go back to the beginning, okay? So Jennifer Jean Hart was born on June 4th, 1979, and Sarah Margaret Gangler was born on April 8th of the same year. Both women were from South Dakota. Jennifer originated from Huron and Sarah from Big Stone City. Both women were the eldest children of their families. Jennifer had 2 siblings and Sarah had 3. Jennifer attended Huron High School and Sarah attended high school in Minnesota. But both of them attended Northern State University in Aberdeen, South Dakota, and that's where they began their relationship. Both of them majored in elementary education, with Sarah focusing on special education. After Sarah graduated in the year 2002, Jennifer left the university without graduating. Jennifer went on to claim years later on her Facebook profile that the two of them were initially closeted when they lived in South Dakota. She explained that when the two of them came out as a couple back then, they had lost a lot of friends. In 2004, they moved to Alexandria, Minnesota, where both women worked at a Herberger's store, which I guess is a department store. In the new location, they made a choice to be open about their relationship. It wasn't long before Sarah was promoted to the team of store managers. Jennifer continued working in the juniors department until she would eventually, down the road, become a stay-at-home mom. One strange incident that had happened during their employment at Herberger's was when Jennifer became offended that the female mannequins had fucking nipples, which is fucking ridiculous. But Jennifer believed that this fed into society's exploitation of women's bodies. So she went and found a hacksaw from the store's tool room and took it upon her fucking self to saw the nipples off of every female mannequin in the store, which is fucking nuts. No one at the store reprimanded Jen, though, since both she and Sarah were very loved by pretty much everyone at that store. I mean, they probably thought she was crazy, but she didn't get into any trouble or anything, which is still kind of surprising because I'm sure it was a corporate structure. I used to work at a Dillard's department store in the cosmetics department for, I don't know, maybe 6 months or so. It was a terrible company to work for, in my opinion. And if you go to Google, what are like the 10 worst companies to work for? It used to be like top 3 on the list. I'm sure it still is. I haven't Googled it for quite some time, but now I'm going to have to. I'm sure it's still on the list. It was horrible, but that's a corporate structure as well. And I'm sure this place is a corporation. And usually when you work for someplace that's corporate, I don't know. It's just different. So, part of me is like totally shocked that she didn't get in trouble for chopping all the nipples off the mannequins. Anyways, moving right along. On May 23rd, 2005, Sarah, who was then 26 years old, petitioned to change her name to Sarah Hart, taking Jennifer's surname. Later on in the year 2009, so like 4.5 years later, after they had adopted all the children, the couple did take the family on a trip to Connecticut so that Sarah and Jennifer could be married, legally married. So at that time, same-sex marriage was not yet legal in every U.S. state, so they had to travel. Before I begin telling you about the adoptions, we need to discuss their parental history prior to that. So apparently there was a time that Sarah became pregnant through in vitro fertilization by an anonymous sperm donor. Both she and Jennifer were incredibly sad when Sarah miscarried the baby at the end of her first trimester. And as far as I know, that's the only time that Sarah tried to become pregnant. And I don't believe that Jennifer ever tried to become pregnant. It was only Sarah that was going to carry the baby had she not miscarried. After that, the Harts were actually foster parents to a 15-year-old girl. This girl, who went by Lee, spoke to the Seattle Times on the condition that she not be identified, although she agreed to let the publication use a variation of her middle name. So that's why we're calling her Lee. This came from the Seattle Times. I will be posting it in my case sources, so you can go and check it out yourself if you're interested. But Lee is in her late 20s now, and was, by her own admission, difficult to control as a teenager. Her biological mom was young, single, and very overwhelmed. She had been in the foster care system in the past, and Lee felt it seemed appropriate to go down that avenue again. So Lee called up her old social worker, who found foster parents able to take her in. The social worker had asked her if she was okay with living with the same-sex couple, and Lee was kind of like, yeah, whatever, it'll be different, but why not? So she had no problems with it. She remembers that she moved into the Hart home during the summer of 2004, before her junior year of high school, and she stayed until spring. Sarah and Jen were in their mid-20s at that time, just a few years out of college. Lee recalls that the first 6 months were really good. They went camping, they went to events, they kept busy. They did a lot of things that Lee hadn't really ever had the opportunity to do before. Pictures show them together, smiling on amusement park rides. Lee said that Sarah was more quiet and that Jen was the more outgoing one. They lived in a 2-story house with a dog and a bunch of cats. Lee also vaguely remembers a makeover that the couple had brought her to at the department store where the Harts worked. As the story was told by a former co-worker, Lee had looked unhappy during the makeover, and Jen and Sarah stood by, real close by with their arms crossed. Apparently, there was a little bit of drama during this makeover because Lee was a tomboy, and back then she never even wore makeup. So she really wasn't comfortable or happy being put in this situation. This same former coworker had also heard from the couple about some problems that they were having with Lee, including that Lee was eating out of the trash. A claim that hurts and baffles Lee because she said that she's never, ever done such a thing, and she doesn't understand why the Harts would have been telling people that. Lee also went on to say that she wasn't deprived of food, as allegations suggested the adopted children later may have been, and she was never hit by either of her foster parents. Lee states that Jen was more moody and was mainly the one that she began to have fights and disagreements with more and more frequently. One day, the threesome even went to Lambeau Field for a Green Bay Packer game for a little family trip. And I'm a Packer fan, so woohoo, go Pack, go. I'm actually from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, for those of you who don't know. And my hometown is about 3 hours away from Green Bay, Wisconsin. So I've always been a Packer fan. Like, literally, I was probably born with one of those little cheesehead hats. on top of me as I, entered the world. I was going to say something worse, but then I decided to be respectful to my mom, who I love. But anyways, guys, I'm a Packer fan. Apparently they were too. So Jennifer and Sarah Hart had brought Lee to this Packer game. They had brought footballs with them, and they were hoping to have them signed by the star running back, Amon Green. Jen in particular was a huge fan of him. But when they approached Green after the game holding up their footballs, Green did the natural thing and he picked up the teenagers' football to sign. So, of course, like anybody would do the same thing. If there were like two adults and a kid, any athlete is probably going to do the right thing and sign the football or sign whatever, give the autograph to the child, not the grown-ass adult, you know what I mean? But that turned into a huge fiasco, and Jen had the attitude that Lee had done it to be a brat. So she totally blamed Lee for the fact that Lee got her football signed, but Jen didn't get hers signed. But afterwards, I guess she ignored Lee for days and days, just being an immature, see you next Tuesday, if you catch my drift. Lee also remembers getting upset at times because she wasn't allowed to ever leave the house if she wasn't going to work or if she wasn't going to school. The Harts had pushed for her to get a job to learn some responsibility, which is a great thing. So Lee got a job working part-time at the local Subway restaurant. When she asked the couple if she could hang out with her friends, she was always told no, and she was told that she had homework to do or chores to do. And before living with them, Lee had run with a much older crowd, and she did things like leave her mom's house in the middle of the night, snuck out. So not being allowed to do things was a huge change for Lee, and it was probably a little tough for her to get used to. Lee's mom, who continued to see Lee while in foster care and still keeps in close touch with her now, has reported that she thinks that the Hart women were trying to change Lee too fast, and they were perhaps using theories that they learned while they were going to college. Despite growing friction, Lee was planning on staying with the Harts until she turned 18. The Harts had asked if she wanted to, and she really truly did. There had even been a meeting with officials about it. All the while, they were also planning to adopt more children. Lee said fostering her seemed to be a way for them to pave the way for that to happen, in part by making the same-sex couple, seem like more suitable candidates for adoption. In Lee's opinion, the Hart's desire to adopt was not about money. I mean, they did get money from the state of Texas, where they did end up adopting kids from, but Lee didn't think that that was the motivator. She said that they loved kids, and although Jen seemed to want them the most, Sarah was always super supportive in the decision. And Lee was all in too. Lee said that she was super excited that she was going to be a big sister. The Harts even seemed to be preparing Lee for this role. They kept telling her that, she needed to be a good influence on the younger siblings when they arrived. The couple went to Texas for a week to meet the first set of 2 sets of siblings they would soon adopt. So there was a set of 3 that they adopted first, and then there was another set of 3 that they adopted later on down the road. But so right now we're just talking about that first set of siblings. So while they went to Texas for the week, Lee had stayed with another family while they were gone, and then she reunited with the Harts when they got back from their trip. Jennifer and Sarah showed Lee all the pictures of the children, and everyone's excitement continued to grow and grow. But Lee's tale, ultimately, is also one that ends in heartbreak. A week before the first 3 children were due to arrive, the Harts dropped Lee off to attend a session with a therapist. Once there, the therapist sat Lee down and informed her that the Harts would not be coming back to pick her up. In fact, new foster parents came to pick her up from the therapy appointment, and when she arrived to their home, she found that all of her shit, all of her personal belongings had already been moved to that new house, which is completely fucked up. And she recalls the therapist telling her it's not your fault. The Harts were just not a good fit. But Lee felt abandoned and she was devastated, and rightfully so. I mean, like the Harts literally had no fucking common decency whatsoever. Lori Bonds, the director of social services for Douglas County, where Alexandria, Minnesota is located, agreed when interviewed that wouldn't probably have been the best practice. She was speaking generally about a child being told about a move in this abrupt way and not about Lee's case specifically, because she said that she could not specifically comment on, that case. But she did say that, they certainly try to prepare children much better than that, thankfully, because that was fucked. On March 4th, 2006, Abigail, who was born in 2003, Hannah, born in 2002, and Marcus, born in 1998, were placed with the Harts from Colorado County, Texas, and the adoption was official the following September. In June of 2008, the Harts adopted 3 more children from Houston. Sierra, who was born in 2005, Devontae, born in 2002, and Jeremiah, born in 2004. The children's biological mother of the second set of 3, their biological mother's name was Sherry Davis. She lost custody to the kids due to substance abuse problems, and the Davis children were given to their paternal aunt, who was named Priscilla Celestine. And it was under the condition that they had no contact at all with their biological mother. But one day, Priscilla was called into work. She was required to work an extra shift that she hadn't planned on working. So she felt that she didn't have any other choice. She was kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, so to speak. So she made the fateful decision to allow their biological mother to come babysit the children. Apparently, the mother had been clean for a lengthy amount of time, so Priscilla felt like it was okay just this one time. But unfortunately, a caseworker observed this when they stopped by for a surprise home visit. Out of all the fucking times that a caseworker shows up, it had to have been then. So instead of just giving her like a slap on the wrist or just kind of talking to her about it, they immediately removed the children from Priscilla's care, and then the court prevented Priscilla from obtaining permanent custody of those kids who were her nephews and her niece. Instead, the Davis children were put into foster care, which is fucked. Like, why put them in foster care when there's family members that want them? They also had an older brother who was named Dante, but he was not adopted by the Harts due to behavioral issues and being an older child, and it was an older child than what was desired. They wanted kids that were all under 8 years old, from what I understand. So the Harts received funds, like I had mentioned, from the state of Texas, covering their 6 adopted children, which accounted for almost 50% of the family's yearly income. In fact, it's been reported that the Harts received a total of over $270,000 over the course of the years that they had the children. And this was all taxpayers' money, but the state of Texas never even checked in with the family periodically. They also never required the Harts to report back to them about how the children were doing, not even on an annual basis. It's just like the state was just like, they're out of our hair now. We don't even have to fucking worry about them anymore, which again is fucked. Like the whole thing is so screwed up. It seems to me like there is a major problem with the system, and without laying any blame, this tragedy may have been avoided entirely if there had been any measure of follow-up from the state of Texas, after the adoption. Like, I don't understand how, they don't ever follow up. members of Jennifer's and Sarah's families both stated that the two women like totally distanced themselves from all of the family. Although both families were totally accepting of their sexual orientation, they did not care that they were gay or that they were married or that they were a couple. That never bothered either of the families. Jennifer had previously estranged herself from her father in 2001, and the couple claimed to have cut contact with the rest of the relatives later on because of constant criticism about their parenting style. During the school year of 2008, while the family was living in Minnesota, a teacher observed bruises on Hannah's left arm and was told that she had been hit by Jennifer with a belt. Within months, all 6 of the children had been pulled out of the public school systems for a year. And so they just wanted to take the kids away from anybody that could help the kids. So as soon as somebody noticed the bruises, as soon as a teacher observed something, that was out of the ordinary, and, Hannah had said, yeah, my mom, Jennifer, hit me with a belt, they just wanted to, take the kids out so that, they couldn't be reported, for doing anything else anymore. But when they did put the kids back into school in 2010, Abigail told the teacher that she had, quote unquote, owies on her back and stomach. And she also stated that she felt threatened by the Harts. It's so sad. She told the teacher how the Harts had beaten her and held her head in cold water over a penny that she had in her pocket that they had assumed that she had stolen. A fucking penny. So they're holding this little girl's head under cold water over a penny that she could have very well just found on the ground. Find a penny, pick it up all day long, you'll have good luck. Why the fuck? Should they care if this little girl had a penny in her fucking pocket? Because they're fucking crazy animals. That's why. But when authorities became involved, Sarah eventually took responsibility for all of the abuse. She pled guilty to assault, and she was sentenced to community service for a year. And that's it. That's it. Community service. So only one short year later, Hannah reportedly told a school nurse. So this is a different little girl. This is the first one, from back in 2008 that had a teacher that noticed the bruise on the arm. So that little girl, Hannah, reportedly told a school nurse that she had not eaten all day. And when the nurse contacted the Harts, this fucking pisses me off, but Sarah claimed that Hannah was merely playing the food card and recommended that she just be given water. Only water. After this incident, any and all interviews of the children themselves revealed no new incidents of abuse, nor did they mention anything that had happened in Minnesota. When Jennifer herself was interviewed, and I remember hearing, going through my research, I didn't put it here in my notes, but Jennifer would only be interviewed if her and Sarah were interviewed together. So she wouldn't let her and her wife be interviewed apart, which is super sketch for sure. She just seemed like she was such a fucking overbearing bitch, okay? But Jennifer herself, when she was interviewed, she claimed that any family problems were the result of other people not being tolerant to 2 lesbian mothers with 6 African American children. So she played, the gay card and the race card. In the end, the investigation could not conclude whether the Harts were guilty of anything or whether there was actually any safety threat. None of the kids confess because they were probably scared, and I'm sure they were coached on what to say. Apparently all the kids said exactly the same thing verbatim, and it's like it was rehearsed, you know what I mean? But they still couldn't do anything because nothing could be proved. Soon afterwards, all 6 of the children were taken out of public schools again, and they were homeschooled from then on. And after that, it wasn't long before the family moved across the country to Oregon. The Hart family had reportedly lived in Oregon for just 3 months when a family friend called Oregon DHS. She was worried about the children after an incident that had taken place at her home on June 28th of 2013. Jennifer Hart and the children were staying with the caller, and she had reportedly ordered pizza for everyone. Jen only gave each child, who was ranging in ages 8 to 15, one small slice of pizza per person and some water. That's all they got. But in the morning, Jen woke up and realized that all of the pizza was gone. So she became incredibly angry. She stated that none of the children would be eating breakfast since none of them confessed to eating the pizza. All 6 children were made to lie on an air mattress with sleeping masks on their faces for 5 hours as punishment. The caller said that the children had appeared to get taller, but not gain any weight at all during the 5 to 7 years since their adoption. The caller also indicated to them that the Harts had been investigated previously in Minnesota for withholding food from the children. She went on to tell them that the Harts pulled the children from school in order to homeschool after the investigation, but that she highly doubted that there was actually any education going on. Instead, Jen Hart was taking the children across the country for weeks at a time, attending music festivals, and frequently had them pose as a happy family for everyone to see on Facebook. The caller stated that the children were terrified of Jennifer, who quite literally was their primary caregiver. Sarah was outside the home working many hours to support the family during the day, but Sarah's loyalty was totally with Jennifer. So they were both against the kids, of course. That same caller also made an allegation of child abuse, touching upon Jennifer's use of Facebook. And she was explaining that how the kids pose and are made to look like one big happy family, but after the photo is taken or after the photo event is over, the kids instantly all go back to looking lifeless and robotic. Neighbors in Oregon, and later on in Washington when they moved there, considered the Harts to be incredibly protective of their privacy. Some had wondered if the children were all purposely kept isolated, aside from the music festivals, rallies, and outdoor activities they all did together. Which I would say, yes, they were intentionally kept isolated. That's abuse. That's what abusive people do. They keep you isolated so that you cannot get help, so that people do not notice the abuse that's happening. Anyway, prior to the murders, 12-year-old Devontae came into national spotlight when he was photographed crying as he embraced a police officer during a 2014 protest in Portland, Oregon, resulting from the Ferguson unrest. The image became known as the hug felt around the world. Jennifer was very active on social media. When I say very, I mean very, very. She used Facebook or Fakebook to project an image of a loving, happy family while also sharing her random thoughts on race, politics, and all the trips the family went on. And this helped mask some of the problems within the family unit and camouflage the abuse that was going on. Guys, I'm going to post the picture of Devontae hugging the police officer who was white. And I remember seeing this picture when it first went viral back in the day. At the time, I kind of equated it to being a political thing. But now that I know the abuse that was going on, it's super heartbreaking to look at the tears, the facial expression that Devontae has in that photo. So when you guys get a second, look on my social media, check out that picture. It's devastating and it's completely devastating because I think that, here was a policeman right there and, he was needing help. He was needing to be saved. He was needing to be saved from the abuse and help was right there, but Jennifer was also right there taking pictures, like setting up this whole thing for her fake book. And so he was scared. Like, you can tell, like, there's fear in his face. And, I remember back in the day, like, people would think that, oh, it's because he's black and it was a white police officer and that's why he was scared and all this stuff. Like, I don't really want to talk about all that type of things. Like, I disagree. I believe now, knowing what happened, that this child was desperate for help and wanted to ask for help, yet felt like he couldn't. He was scared. Check it out, though, guys. It's like, just like tugs at your heartstrings. And like, that's like one of the reasons why I had a hard time sleeping when I was like researching for this case. Like, there's a couple of different documentaries on this too that you guys can watch. One is called Broken Hearts, and then there's another one as well. And I'm going to put those in the case notes, the case sources in my notes too. So, or you can like search for them on YouTube. I think they're on there. But I watched both of them. I'm going to give my thoughts on them more like at the end of this podcast episode. And so that way I can just continue the story, okay? So let's keep moving on. So after a period of living in West Lynn, Oregon, the Harts moved on to Woodland, Washington, which was an extremely rural area. So, of course, again, they are trying to keep the kids isolated as fuck. Sarah became a manager at a Kohl's in nearby Hazel Dell. In August of 2017, Hannah jumped out of her second-story bedroom window at around 1:30 in the morning, and she approached the residence of her neighbors, who were Bruce and Dana DeKalb. They lived next door, and they said that before that, like, they rarely even spoke to the family. Hannah had reportedly pleaded with them, "Don't make me go back. They're racist and they abuse us." The Harts found Hannah and took her back home. And the following day, Jennifer attempted to explain the incident away by claiming that Hannah was lying, that the children occasionally acted out because they were quote-unquote drug babies, and that Hannah's biological mother was bipolar. Like, when they were getting ready to leave the house, Jen, like, totally took charge, and as they were walking out the door, she told Hannah, "You need to tell these people you're sorry." And then Hannah said, "Yes, ma'am." And then Jen said, "You need to explain that you just had a really bad week." And then again, Hannah said, "Yes, ma'am." So Dana DeKalb had planned on calling CPS in the morning, but at 6:30 in the morning, when the doorbell rang, they ignored it, and then an hour later it rang again, and the entire Hart family, was standing there in a row. It was Jen that was doing all of the talking. She said that the kids were adopted, like I said, and had been drug babies. She said that Hannah was 12. Her mom had been bipolar, like I already said. And Dana was thinking, holy shit, like, how is this little girl 12 years old? She looked much younger. Her front teeth were missing. And Jennifer tried to say that it was because she'd knocked them out in a fall and didn't want them replaced. But come on, what 12-year-old girl, what preteen girl is not going to want her two front teeth replaced, But anyways, she went on to tell the DeKalbs that, she had to homeschool the kids for all these reasons. And when the DeKalbs asked why, Jen said, "Hello, we're two lesbian moms with 6 black kids." So, I mean, it's just crazy. But she had asked Hannah she had made Hannah write a letter to the DeKalbs apologizing. I'm going to read you what the letter says. It's absolutely crazy. But Dana DeKalb wanted to talk to Hannah alone, but Jennifer would not let them speak with Hannah alone. But this is what the letter said. It says, I'm going to read exactly how it's worded, even though like some of it's like incorrect grammar or whatever. It says, "Dear Dana Bruce, I I stopped this morning because I feel awful about disturbing your peace and worrying you in the middle of the night. I was very frustrated with my brother and didn't handle things very maturely, and I'm sorry for telling lies to get attention. I'm working on being more honest and finding better ways to communicate my frustrations. I've also been sad about 2 of our cats dying recently, so I was just very sad and frustrated last night. Thank you for being kind. Hannah. Now, guys, I don't know about you, but that does not sound like a letter that a little girl or a preteen girl would write herself. Like, that totally sounded like it was coerced, and, the words were basically Jennifer Hart's words, put on paper in Hannah's handwriting. Dana DeKalb said that Devontae had begun to come to their home a dozen times, asking for food, saying his parents always withheld food as punishment. So she was getting increasingly worried about this family. She recounted how Devontae's request for food escalated. First, he asked if the DeKalbs had any tortillas. And then the next morning when he came back and asked if they had any bread. And she didn't have any bread, but she gave him more tortillas. Devontae later came back asking for more. And then he started asking for peanut butter and then a case of peanut butter, all non-perishables. The list went on, and he was eventually coming over to the DeKalb's home over 3 times per day. Dana finally told him that she was going to have to call for help. Not long after, Devontae came over again, and she recalls the boy's first words when he came to the door. He said, "Have you called?" So she almost got the feeling of it was more like, "What are you waiting for, lady? How much more do I have to tell you?" Basically, I keep telling you that we're, being abused and starved, and, food is being withheld as punishment, I'm sure that she feels terrible. I can't imagine how she feels living next door to them and not being able to do more, maybe feeling helpless or hopeless. So anyways, she and her husband Bruce decided the situation was much more serious than teens needing extra food, and she finally called the authorities. I guess that her dad had called the authorities and reported it in a 911 call after Hannah's incident and before Devontae started coming over for food. But I don't think anything was ever investigated or nothing was ever really done. So I didn't see that in my research. And this story, there's so much to this story that, there's actually a really good podcast called Broken Hearts. It's through Glamour Magazine and something else. They kind of co-did it together, but there's maybe 6 episodes, and of course I listened to all those when I was putting my notes together for my podcast, but literally I didn't want to do more than one part. So I haven't even done a 2-part case yet. I know it's right around the corner because some of the cases that are on my list, there's no way to do it in just one episode, but I really wanted to keep this episode just a 1-parter. So if this intrigues you and you want to learn more, I would absolutely recommend that podcast. It's called Broken Hearts, and I'll try to put that in my case sources as well. There's so much. If you just search Hart tragedy, Hart family, all this shit's gonna pop up, but there's just so much. There's so much. So after the DeKalbs called authorities, caseworkers tried to reach the Harts 2 different times. Once on March 23rd, 2018, which was 3 days before the murders, and once on the day of the murders. An official went to the family's home on March 23rd, knocked and rang the doorbell, and the official left her card in the front door, according to records. Two officials returned March 26th, which was the day that the Hart's SUV was found. And the card from the Friday before had been removed. So these two officials knew that somebody had been home and like saw the card from the first visit. One of the officials left another card and they called law enforcement to request a welfare check. Fucking finally, right? I mean, all of this, it breaks my heart that all of these things could have been done before if people were to report things quicker. And then another thing is, the Harts, Jennifer and Sarah, just kept running. They would leave one state to another. So it was really hard for investigators to like find them and follow them. I mean, that was like a trick that the Hart women, did to continue to be able to get away with this and not be investigated and not be prosecuted for, all this abuse. According to an incident report following the murders, it was also reported that Sarah had told a coworker that she wished someone had told her it was okay not to have a big family. Then she and Jennifer would not have adopted the children. On March 26, 2018, Sarah and Jennifer Hart murdered all 6 of their children when Jennifer drove their vehicle, a GMC Yukon XL, over that 100-foot cliff on California State Route 1 in Mendocino County, California, near Westport. Expert analysis of the SUV's internal airbag deploying computer determined that the Yukon had been intentionally driven off the edge of the cliff from a standing stop, and it accelerated to 20 miles per hour in only 3 seconds with the throttle at 100%. There were also tire tracks found on the edge of the cliff, and they only proved that the vehicle had accelerated from a standing stop and did not show any evidence at all of there being any use of the brakes or trying to avoid going over that cliff. Jen and Sarah Hart and 3 of their adopted children all died on impact. A forensic pathologist testified during a coroner's inquest to help authorities classify the deaths. The bodies of the women were both inside the SUV when it was discovered, but Jennifer's body fell out as the vehicle was being towed up the cliff. I didn't realize that they actually towed vehicles or removed vehicles or did anything before getting the bodies out. Like, I would have assumed that even though it was over a cliff on some rocks, I would have assumed that they would remove the bodies first and maybe tow the bodies up or use a helicopter or something. But no, they literally towed the vehicle up the cliff with the bodies still inside. So Jennifer's fucking dumbass fell out, which I'm not sad about at all. Sarah's body was found crushed between the passenger seat and the roof of the car. They were only able to identify Sarah Hart through a Minnesota driver's license that was found near the car, and wasn't able to identify Jennifer Hart at all due to her fall. Again, I say good. You may think I'm mean, or hopefully you agree with me, but yeah, that bitch, I don't feel bad, but they could not. That must have been a pretty hefty fall, but she was later identified by authorities. Forensic pathologist Greg Pizarro testified that Jennifer Hart was drunk when she drove her family off that cliff, saying that the autopsy found that she had a blood alcohol level of 0.102. California drivers are considered drunk with a level of 0.08 or higher. She was also the only one wearing a seatbelt, which is weird because her body fell out of the car when it was being towed. So I don't know. I just thought that was odd and interesting. Sarah Hart and the children all had large amounts of diphenhydramine in their systems, and that's a drug that can cause drowsiness. And when I say that they had large amounts, I would say it's approximately I think they said that Sarah had the equivalent of 42 capsules or like tablets in her body. But like one small blessing, like if we can even call it a blessing, if we can even like find any blessings in this situation, is that the children were probably fast asleep and they were not aware of the terror that was going to be brought upon them by their own parents. Later on, during the investigation, police officers found video footage of Jennifer Hart purchasing Benadryl at a Walmart in Washington before they ever even left the state. Some of the almost empty bottles of Benadryl were later recovered from the vehicle by investigators. The bodies of Marcus, Jeremiah, and Abigail were found at the scene that same day near the car. 2 weeks later, the body of Sierra Hart was pulled from the Pacific Ocean. Sierra's body was too decomposed and they couldn't determine a cause of death. They could only assume her manner of death was similar to that of all of the other children. Later on, a passerby on the beach found a single shoe and a pair of jeans on the beach. Inside the shoe was a sock that had skeletal remains inside, and the jeans had the letter H handwritten on the inside of the waistband. And although it took many months to get the confirmation, the remains found in the shoe were matched to Hannah Hart later on through DNA testing. The remains of 15-year-old Devonte Hart have still not been found, but a Superior Court judge ruled that Devonte was in the vehicle at the time of the crash and a death certificate was signed on April 3rd, 2019.
I'm certainly aware of a contingent of citizens who have a belief that Devonte was not in the car. To those and to all, the Sheriff's Office would certainly welcome any information that would prove our belief incorrect. It is our opinion and the jury's opinion that he lived with his family, and unfortunately, he perished with his family.
Honestly, it would be fantastic if something were to come out and Devonte was found alive somehow. Maybe he had escaped the family. Maybe he wasn't with them. But I can't imagine Jennifer and Sarah leaving anything left. Like, they were of the opinion that if they couldn't have their kids, if they weren't going to raise their kids, then nobody was going to have the kids. So I can't imagine them doing this without having every single child with them inside that vehicle. So I don't know. But like I said, I would totally, absolutely recommend you going down the rabbit hole with me. If you liked this story, you're going to get a lot more information about how fucking narcissistic Jennifer Hart was, and how much of an enabler Sarah Hart was, because there was a lot of abuse going on there. And I 100% think that it was mostly Jennifer Hart committing the abuse, but Sarah enabled her. That's just my opinion. Sarah kind of comes across as the person, the parent, not wanting to cause drama or make waves with the way that, her wife was parenting. So I don't know. This just totally makes me sick, though, that they were able to get, be under the radar and not get caught for all this abuse just by moving from state to state and just keeping the kids completely isolated. So I want to share with you guys the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children. This, I'm sure you guys have heard of it before. The founders were John Walsh, who is from Unsolved Mysteries. I believe it is Unsolved Mysteries. And he actually did have a child in the past that was abducted. Ronald Reagan is also a founder, and a guy named Ernie Allen. But there is a phone number for this National Center for Missing and Exploited Children that I want you guys to write this down in case you ever need it. The number is 1-800 843-5678. So if you suspect any kind of child abuse, child neglect, human trafficking, that's the number that you can contact for help. There's also a website. It says ice.gov, ICE.gov. So definitely something that I wish that other people had done more often or prior. I mean, I know that some people, the friend that Jen and the kids had been visiting, she reported, and some people did report, but like I can't help but think that if Dana and Bruce DeKalb had decided, to make some kind of, phone call to get help prior, that maybe this wouldn't have happened. I don't know. Maybe it still would have, because I'm certain too that they have to feel an enormous amount of guilt, and I'm not saying that they are guilty. They don't need to feel guilty, but I know that if it were me and I made a report and then the parents go and drive off a cliff and murder all of the children, I would feel guilty for making the report, because I would start to think, well, maybe if I had kept quiet and didn't, send the investigators and the caseworkers and officials to the house, then, maybe they wouldn't have done this. Maybe they wouldn't have resorted to murdering all of their children and committing suicide. Like, it's so senseless. It's absolutely senseless. And there's been other like type of discussions going on that, maybe one of them, was reportedly supposed to have been terminally ill, but they didn't find anything in the autopsies, like, that stated that anybody did have any kind of terminal disease. In fact, I went and I Googled and I read like every single autopsy for all of the bodies found. And it was really interesting that it proves the theory that the kids were indeed being starved. They were having food withheld from them, which is child fucking abuse. But none of the kids, well, only one child, and he wasn't really even a child anymore. It was the oldest one, Marcus, who was 19 years old on the date of their murder. He was the only one that weighed over 100 pounds. All of the other children who were teenagers, they all weighed less than 100 pounds. Some of them far less than 100 pounds. One of the girls weighed like 76 pounds. But yeah, they were like totally, and I could see like, okay, maybe if you have 6 kids and one is like underweight, but you're not going to have 6 kids that are all like well under the growth chart, for their height and weight. You know what I mean? So they were absolutely being abused and being starved and having food withheld from them. They were absolutely being exploited on Facebook, made to look like they were this happy family, and they were like all unified, and they were all like I don't know, like I feel like there was like a kind of like hippie like love, like every we love everybody and love is everywhere, and despite the fact that we're gay and our children are black and we're white and all this stuff, like they really use that to their advantage to continue to be able to get away with abusing these kids and like just totally exploiting them on Facebook. Like I found Jennifer Hart's Facebook immediately, and I did find Sarah's as well, but Jennifer Hart's like so many of her posts, and if you Google it for any of her posts too, because you can't see all of them, but they're fucking fake. And she'd be like spouting out and spewing out all these like weird ass like things. Like, I don't know. I can't explain it. I'm not going to read it all. It's in the Broken Hearts podcast, and it's also, you can Google it, but it's fucking whack. Like, She was a fucking narcissistic, crazy ass bitch. And yeah, I'm never gonna change my mind on that. And Sarah was a spineless fucking bitch herself. So I'm sure she was exhausted because she was the one working so many hours to support the family. And the only thing that Jennifer did to support the family was, get the money from Texas, from the state of Texas, for all the children that they adopted, and she was home abusing every day. Oh, it was also reported, before I end this, it was also reported that Jennifer would she was supposed to be homeschooling the kids, but she would reportedly be fucking playing some online stupid ass game for hours and hours and hours and hours every day. And she was actually the leader of whoever was playing this game with her. They had a little group, and she would always organize everything and probably be completely bossy and bitchy. And I guess that she stepped away from it and stopped playing because something happened and she didn't fucking get her way, or somebody did something else that they wanted to do that pissed her off, so she stopped playing the game. But it was reported that she was playing it so much that it was a full-time job. So when did she fucking have time to pay attention to the kids or educate them, or you know what I mean, or do any of these motherly things? So basically, I feel like she sat home on her fat ass playing games, probably scarfing up all the food that was in the refrigerator and not letting the kids fucking have any. Because that autopsy report said that she weighed over 200 fucking pounds. And I'm not bashing anybody that's listening to this that is overweight, but you cannot claim that you're all eating organically and you're all vegetarians and you don't drink and you do everything healthy, but you weigh I think it was 208 pounds, and all of your kids, all of your teenagers are well under 100 pounds and undernourished and not fed. So that fucking bitch just pisses me off. So I can't, if you guys go down the rabbit hole, I can't even. I can't even. It just sickens me. But the only thing that I can stop to think to myself is hopefully that all of these kids had so much Benadryl in their system that they were probably not in a coma, but they were probably deeply asleep. And I heard it only took 3 seconds for the vehicle, for the Yukon, to hit the rocks below, and it landed upside down. So in that 3 seconds, I'm assuming that the kids maybe didn't even wake up, or maybe woke up right before impact, and it was reported that they all they died instantly. So that's the only good thing, that they were asleep and they were drugged, because if they had been wide awake, that would have been even completely more devastating and horrific than it already is. So yeah. And I guess some tourists, I think they were from Germany. Hey Germany, I know you're listening. So there was tourists from Germany that actually found the crash and reported it to the police. So I can't even imagine what that would have been like. But I guess that they were camping somewhere, and they had heard the accident in the middle of the night, and they thought that they heard somebody yell for help, but then they didn't hear anything else, so they kind of put it out of their mind. But later on, they found the SUV out on the beach. So that would have just been, it would have been insane to come across that. It would have been, I don't even know if I would ever sleep again if I came across something like that. But anyways, guys, I hope that you've enjoyed your first Patreon episode. You guys are going to get 2 every month if you sign up for the Never Shuts Up tier, which is the 3rd tier, and you get 1 per month if you sign up for the middle tier. So and then I'm always going to be putting my weekly the regular, not normal, because nothing about me is normal, but the regular episode every Sunday. The patrons are going to be able to come here and get it on Saturday if you'd like to hear it a day early. So tell all your friends about this. it's so exciting to me that we're getting to this point already. This, after only 12 regular episodes. So I'm excited to continue doing this, and I'm continued to bring you some more cases. So I'm actually going to be putting up a poll here pretty soon too, and asking you guys maybe what you would like me to cover in an episode here on Patreon next month, because I've got this list growing, but I kind of want to hear about what you guys want to hear about. I want to know, like what interests you, like what cases, because there's many cases out there that are awesome, but they're way overdone. And so far I've strayed away from like the lengthier cases where I have to do them in like 2 or 3 episodes. And I think though that if I do that, I would probably give you guys 2 episodes 2 days in a row versus giving you one Sunday episode and making you wait a whole fucking week for part 2. Because honestly, guys, little secret, that's not so much a secret, but I fucking hate when my favorite podcasts do that to me. I won't even listen to the first episode until the second one comes out, because it will drive me fucking bonkers to have to wait. I'm a very impatient person. So anyways, guys, hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you have a great rest of the day, week, month, year, life, whatever. And until next time, keep talking crime.